We're going to enjoy a few pieces of music written for three voices. The origins of this tradition lie, I understand, with the growth of music sung by female voices in the 16th and 17th centuries. But for Christians, they inevitably have a correspondence with our understanding of the Trinity in a way that the three voices together make music that would not be possible without any one of them, and the music is both one and three. The origins of the doctrine of the Trinity lie in the early Christians' attempt to hold together the strict doctrine of monotheism that came to them from the Jewish tradition with their conviction about the divinity of Christ. And it took until the 4th century for the Nicene Creed to be written, which set out the doctrine of the Trinity in the form in which we recognize it today. But on a popular level, the Trinity is often referred to in terms of everything coming in threes, for three-leaf clovers being an often quoted example. Augustine's account of the Trinity in his famous book in the 4th century has all kinds of threefold analogies for the Trinity. But today, I think we think of the Trinity mostly in two rather contrasting ways. The first is conjured by a story of Bertrand Russell when he went to talk to a philosophical society about how the earth was suspended in space. At the end of his talk, an elderly person in the audience said, "What you've said is complete nonsense. The earth sits on a flat plate supported on the back of a giant tortoise." And Bertrand Russell, thinking he would outwit the elderly member of the audience, said, "But what is the tortoise standing on?" And the woman said, "That's where you're mistaken. It's turtles all the way down." So in our understanding of the Trinity, we understand today that the Trinity is relationship all the way down. Relationship is the most real thing about God. But the contrasting way in which people talk about the Trinity today is when people stumble over the language of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit as being very male. As the theologian Mary Daly once said, when God is male, male is God. And that has become the focus of many criticisms of the language of the Trinity, but no satisfactory language has been created yet to replace it. Maybe it will. Now, it's our tradition at Great Sacred Music to start with a hymn that we all sing together. And today you'll find on the inside of your sheets that you would have picked up on your way in a hymn entitled "All Hail, Adored Trinity." Those of you who were born in the 11th century will know that it's based on a Latin hymn, Ave Calenda Trinitas, and you're welcome to sing it in Latin if that's what you prefer. But those of you who are lawyers will be gratified to know that it came to our attention because John D. Chambers, whose name you can spot there, the 19th century liturgical writer, was himself a lawyer. So there is redemption for lawyers after all. We're going to sing the tune Ilsley, which is an early 18th century tune, quite an old tune, written by the then organist of Winchester College. We remain seated, the voices stand and lead us as we sing "All Hail, Adored Trinity."
All hail, adored Trinity.
Now we're going to hear two contrasting pieces. The first is a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, written in 1824, entitled Music When Soft Voices Die. It's a very moving, it's a very sad poem, which is really about grief and what we hold on to when we have lost our loved ones. And he gives 4 different examples of what we can hold on to, the first of which is music. It's been set an awful lot of times, I think dozens of times. We're going to hear the setting by Edward Bairstow, who was the organist of Wigan and then Leeds, and then from 1913, York Minster. He was once asked if he planned, like his predecessor, to emigrate to America, and he said he would rather go to the devil. So apologies to those of our number who have come from afar. He wasn't very impressed with your arrangements. It's nonetheless a beautiful piece of music. The second piece we're going to hear is a setting of the Ave Maria by Johann Melchior Glettle, who was a 17th century Swiss organist, Kapellmeister, and composer. The Hail Mary, as many of you will be familiar with, is a fusion of words from the story of the Annunciation, when Gabriel comes to the Virgin Mary, and the Visitation, when Mary comes to her cousin Elizabeth. It forms the basis for the Angelus and the Rosary, and it concludes in its usual form with asking Mary's intercessions at the left hand of the Father. Let's enjoy this more 20th century setting and then the 17th century setting by Glettle of these two trios now. Well, we're now going to move into the 19th century, and we start with Lift Thine Eyes, a setting of Psalm 121 from Mendelssohn's Elijah. Mendelssohn, the grandson of the philosopher Moses Mendelssohn, famous for his music and for many things, but perhaps most of all responsible for reintroducing the work of Bach into the popular imagination. And then we're going to hear a setting of the Agnus Dei from a Mass by Gabriel Fauré. Gabriel Fauré, director of the Paris Conservatoire, and by the early 20th century, the leading composer in France. Always been greatly admired in this country, far more on the whole than for a long time in the rest of the world, although the rest of the world, as in so many other things, is gradually catching up. Let's enjoy these two pieces now.
Whence cometh
Now it's time for us all to sing again, and you're probably expecting me to say that only 3 of you are going to sing, but you don't get off that easily. We're going to sing Christ is Made the Sure Foundation, which again you can find on the inside of your sheets, translated again from a Latin hymn, this time in the 7th century, translated by J.M. Neale, the redoubtable Victorian Anglo-Catholic translator of Latin hymns. We owe so many translations to him. It's almost impossible to believe that he originally set this hymn to plain song, and he saw it as a Lord's hymn for monastic offices, to be preceded by Blessed City, Heavenly Salem, which was to be sung at the night vigil. And the last verse of both hymns is the same. It's impossible to imagine that, because once this became paired with Purcell's tune Westminster Abbey, it became the standard, if somewhat plodding, hymn for the dedication of a church. And if you think about when it was composed when the two were joined together in the 19th century, we don't dedicate a lot of churches these days, but in the 19th century they were doing them hand over fist, and so you can see it became an absolute staple for the dedication. Probably most of the Victorian churches in London had this hymn sung at their dedication. The notion of Christ as the cornerstone comes up 2 or 3 times in the New Testament, notably 1 Peter 2 and Ephesians 2. Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, quoting Isaiah chapter 28. We remain seated as the voices stand and lead us as we sonorously sing Christ is Made the Sure Foundation. We're coming towards the end of Great Sacred Music. I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you have, there's an opportunity to make a donation as you leave, either in cash or with a swipe. Do look out for Great Sacred Music next week on the theme of heaven, and our sister program, Choral Classics, on Sunday on the theme of joy. That's at 3:15 on Sunday afternoon. As many of you will know, it was Corpus Christi, the Feast of Corpus Christi, a week ago today, and we're going to mark that now by our choice of a final anthem, which is a Eucharistic hymn of Thomas Aquinas. As you may know, he wrote quite a number of hymns for the different moments in the day on Corpus Christi, and this is for the Eucharist. And we're going to hear a setting, another French 19th century setting. Félix Alexandre Guilmant was a late 19th century French composer and professor of organ, again at the Conservatoire de Paris. Thanks for joining us today for this exploration, theologically, spiritually, and musically, of the notion of the trio, the theology of three.